the Bloc was proposing was fiscally irresponsible. It would cost $3 billion per year, and in many cases, it would go to people who don't need it. So we're certainly, and we've agreed to sit down and talk with the Bloc in terms of what other measures that we could put in place, but it was poor public policy, and we voted against it. We're not going to be held hostage simply to extend the life of our government to something that makes absolutely no sense from a fiscal and also from a social point of view.
So that was the Minister of Environment and Climate Change today, speaking with CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos. That interview is set to air Sunday on CTV's Question Period. Now, Steven Guilbeault made it clear extending the 10% top-up of old age security to seniors between the age of 65 and 74 is not on the table. But it's one of two demands by the Bloc Québécois in order to support the minority government. So if the Liberals won't play ball with the Bloc, can Prime Minister Justin Trudeau count on the NDP now? Here's Jagmeet Singh earlier today.
When it comes to confidence zones, we've been very clear. We're going to look at each vote as it comes. But I'm letting people know that right now, after this bill, this historic bill has been passed into law, it is now the law of the land. I want to see these deals signed. So I'm letting Justin Trudeau know, I'm letting the government know, get the deal signed. Let's make sure people get access to free birth control and free diabetes medication.
So as you mentioned there, the pharmacare bill is over the finish line, but clearly a lot more work to do. So does that mean that Singh will continue to prop up the government until those deals are all signed, or is the government out of so-called dance partners? Let's bring in our dancers on the front bench. Sabrina Grover, she was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election and senior advisor at Spark Advocacy and North Star Public Affairs. Melanie Paradis is former communications director to Aaron O'Toole. She's now the president of Texture Communications. Former NDP MPP Gurdaton Singh, he's now the vice president at Crestview Strategies. He's also the brother to federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and CTV News parliamentary correspondent Rachel Aiello. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to all of you. Gurdaton, let's start with you. Help us flesh out what your brother is saying there. Is the NDP going to pull its support for the Liberals if those pharmacare deals still hang in the balance?
Well, let's first start off by talking about what a misstep the Bloc Québécois has done on this. They had an opportunity to actually push something forward, and they clearly did not play their cards correctly, and they squandered what little limelight they had at a moment to advocate and push for issues, and they clearly did not negotiate it well. The ball is back in the hands of the NDP, and the NDP has been pretty clear across the board. They said that they're going to negotiate bill per bill, and there's clearly some indication from the leader of the NDP today that there's a priority around signing deals around pharmacare, a very historic signing of legislation where now diabetes medication and birth control will be available to Canadians across the board, as long as those deals are signed with the provinces. So I think it's going to go vote to vote as described by the leader, and we'll see if the Prime Minister takes a pretty clear note from the leader of the NDP, get those deals signed, and potentially there'll be some more ability to negotiate. We don't know. We'll have to see as the bills come, as the opportunities and the votes come forward.
Yeah, but Gurdaton, I'm just trying to dig into this here for a second. So does that mean until all those deals are signed that the NDP will still be there supporting / prodding the government?
Well, you have to ask the NDP for that specific answer. I think what based on my analysis and based on my opinion, what you're seeing is the NDP having a very clear indication of what a priority is, and very clear that right now there's a historic expansion of healthcare to include medication. We're talking about universal access to diabetes medication and to birth control. And so there's a clear indication from the leader of the NDP, get the deal signed, and we'll see what further support can be there.
Sabrina, I want to go back to what Steven Guilbeault said, and he was very unequivocal with what the Liberals are willing to do with the Bloc Québécois. How do you see how he's drawn that line in the sand?
You know, I think Mr. Guibeault was very free to express his opinion. Obviously, he's a member from Quebec, and so I think he's got some personal, feelings about how this unfolds and the Bloc personally as well. But I think that I would take Karina Gould at her word, as she's the deputy House leader, she is the House leader, and I think that her stance has been very clear that negotiations with the Bloc aren't off the table. What is off the table is passing a $16 billion bill through a private member's bill, which I think is fair and reasonable for the Liberals to take that stance. I think if there is an opportunity to negotiate on OAS or on other advantages for seniors, whether that's through GIS or other modes of income supplement or anything else that might ease the life of a senior in Canada, I don't think that's off the table. And I think that Minister Gould has made that very obvious and very clear. I think, there's always MPs that are going to have different stances, but I don't think that that's fully the direction that the government has intended to go or has stated that they're going to be going.
So, Sabrina, do you think that Minister Guilbeault was speaking out of line here?
I don't think he's speaking out of line. Like, as I said, I think ministers are entitled to their own opinions, and I think he's taken, this stance, and I think he's got some, strong views on it. But I don't think that he's the one necessarily responsible for negotiating with the Bloc or putting this legislation forward. And I think what the government is doing in the House, being led by Minister Gould, is more likely what I think will end up happening.
So, Melanie, do you think that either Minister Guilbeault or the Liberals, because I think at this point it's a little unclear where they stand on this, are they making a mistake by drawing such a hard line in the sand with the Bloc?
I think they're absolutely making a mistake. I think that Steven Guilbeault is on, he's on a tear. He's just continuing his streak of being awful. This started, a few weeks ago, or actually maybe it was a couple months ago now, when he was overheard in the Ottawa train station speaking loudly about whether or not the Prime Minister should step down or not, and then his handling of the horrible situation in Jasper has been terrible, and now this interview. I think that this was absolutely a mistake for two reasons. One, the Liberals have revealed, or Guibeault has revealed anyway, that the Liberals don't have any plan for seniors and for affordability. They're offering nothing else in place of the Bloc's OAS plan. And then the second thing that they've done is they've shown their cards. The Bloc had guaranteed them safety until October 29th. And the Liberals could have used, and probably were planning to use up, all of the opposition day motions in that time and burn up the opportunity for the opposition to bring confidence votes against them. And now they may not be able to do that because the Bloc has seen the Liberals' cards and they know that they're not going to play ball anymore. So the real question is, what is the Bloc going to do next week? Is Blanchet going to take this sitting down? I don't think so. That's not the kind of man that he is.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Bloc Québécois also had an opportunity, Rachel, to help unblock Parliament right now. And Yves-François Blanchet made it clear that, look, I'll help you unblock Parliament as long as you meet my two demands. And it doesn't seem like there's going to be any movement there.
Yeah, that's what I find really fascinating about this, is the Bloc had essentially extended this olive branch to the Liberals, saying if you want to get over this document dump impasse over the so-called Green Slush Fund in the House of Commons, give us the royal recommendation. Should we take Minister Guibeault at his word? I will say there have been times he's come on and said things that the government didn't actually end up intending to do. So jury's out on that. But should he be correct in stating that the government is not interested in pursuing this 10% increase to OAS, the Bloc then are going to take that as, okay, well, then we're not going to help you end the impasse in the House. But that could be a blessing right now for the Liberals, because the longer that privilege debate is going on, yes, government bills aren't getting passed, but confidence motions can't be brought. There can't be any sort of challenge of them. And in a time where now we're looking at the Bloc and the Conservatives potentially being in a position to vote non-confidence, the Liberals need to kind of get their ducks in line and start talking to the NDP, maybe?
Right. Yeah, something, right? Like some sort of conversation. But then, Melanie, we come back to, I don't remember, but I am taking notes, your suggestion of a possible prorogation. Does that mean we're closer to that because they're seemingly happy to let Parliament sit in this moment of stasis like this?
They clearly have run out of options. They don't have a plan to get out of this mess. Prorogation is likely their best remedy right now. And the question will be, how long are they going to prorogue for? How long do they have the budget to be able to do that? Could they put government on pause all the way until the new year? I can't wait to see what they do. Like, look, next week we have the foreign interference inquiry. The Prime Minister is going to be at that, and I think that would be an interesting moment for them to consider whether they want to prorogue or not. They did that with the WE scandal last time.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in our next segment. But Sabrina, when you consider the options that they have right now, and let's say one few less dance partners that are now sort of in line, I mean, as Rachel suggested, do we now start to see a ramping up of discussions with the NDP, or is it just a continuation? I mean, it's unclear whether or not there are even discussions. We heard from Vash Kapelos at the beginning of the show that, it's unclear where the House leaders are and the conversations that are being had.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that the negotiation with the Bloc isn't off the table. I think that the House leader has been very clear that she is open to that and she's open to conversations about it. We've seen other measures that have come forward to help seniors as well. And I think it's, as we mentioned off the top of the show, it is a historical day on the passing of pharmacare legislation. And, I think that things like that are going to continue to help improve the relationships that they have with the NDP and with the Bloc. I think that there is certainly a procedural question that the Liberals have now, and they do have to figure out how they're going to move forward between the question of privilege and between this deal with either the Bloc and the NDP or the Bloc and the NDP together. I think those are some things that they'll have to consider, but they're going to have to make that decision fairly quickly here. And so I think that they don't have a lot of time on the runway. So I do think that by next week we'll see some movement.
Gerdeton, do you think it's time for the NDP to start upping their demands, realizing that if they are going to be one of the only options that the Liberals have, that they need to put more on the table in terms of asks?
Well, I think what's very clear is that the ball is once again in the court of the NDP. The NDP has a really strong opportunity once again to push forward the priorities that, in their opinion, are the best for Canadians, things like these social expansions of healthcare and dental care and more. We have a very specific mention now of pharmacare. This is really historic. This is the first time we've actually seen legislation to ensure that really important pieces of medication like birth control and diabetes are actually available to Canadians across the board. That's clearly a priority for the NDP. So yeah, the ball's in the court of the NDP, and let's see how much they can continue to push this government to do what's right for Canadians.
Rachel, just in closing, do you think that we start to see that balance shift now with the NDP going, oh, well, look, you want to come back to us now? Let's have other discussions.
If Jagmeet Singh signaled that today, then maybe. But he had a prime opportunity when he was asked by reporters today, are you willing now to say that you're going to prop up the government if they get these deals done? Hold them to the fire to make sure these provinces sign on. And he didn't take that opportunity.
Right.
He said, again, the same thing he has said since early September about we're going to go vote by vote. Like, Jagmeet Singh has put nothing on the table in terms of a concrete ask for this Liberal minority. He went into this sitting saying he was going to seek things that were good for Canadians. I have yet to hear him articulate a single thing.
Yeah, but at least he's consistent in his messaging and saying that it'll be vote by vote.